Well, we talked a little bit about it before, but I really think everyone should return to the office and stop this work from home remote madness.
Welcome to Between the Briefs, a podcast by Steno. We're here to bring you practical tips, expert insights, and real conversations about the pretrial process, court reporting, and the legal technology shaping the future of litigation. I'm your host, Adrian.
And I'm your host, Joe Stevens. Whether you're an attorney, paralegal, or just curious about how technology is changing the legal industry, we've got something for you. Each episode will break down complex topics, share behind-the-scenes intel, and talk to the people leading innovation in and out of the courtroom. So grab a coffee and let's get into what's happening between the briefs.
Hello and welcome to Between the Briefs, brought to you by Steno. We are your hosts. My name is Adrian.
And I'm your co-host, Joe Stevens.
And in this episode, we're thrilled to announce Jesse-Justin Cuevas, an accomplished trial lawyer with an extensive experience in complex commercial litigation, recognized as one of the top 100 lawyers in California. Jesse has built a remarkable career working on high-stakes cases across a wide array of industries, including antitrust, breach of contract, and products liability.
As a partner at Sussman Godfrey, she's achieved landmark victories in some of the most challenging trials, often joining cases just before they're set to go to trial, and securing impressive results. Jesse is also deeply committed to leadership within her community, promoting diversity and inclusion in the legal profession. Jesse, welcome to the show. It's great to have you with us today. How are you?
Thanks so much for having me. I'm doing great.
Love to hear it. Now, Jesse, you've had an incredible career, as a trial lawyer. Can you just take us back to the beginning? Where did it all start for you?
Sure. So I think something that folks probably don't know, certainly from looking at my online bio, for example, I was a really serious dancer growing up. So I always thought that I was going to go to law school maybe as a second career, start in my 30s after my dance career was sort of ended by force because of the way that the industry works. I ended up sort of departing from that world when I was, in high school, kind of burnt out like a lot of, I think, young athletes do. And like so many people, particularly young folks who are starting to understand their relationship between themselves and sort of the world, I was a bleeding heart who loved thinking about constitutional criminal issues, procedural issues, individual rights, that kind of stuff. But once I eventually went to law school, I had to take a really serious look about what I wanted my life to look like. And while those are issues that are incredibly close to my heart, and those are places where I want to sort of put my money, if you will, I knew that I needed to go into private practice. I wanted to support my family. I'm a first-generation American. On my dad's side, I'm the first person in my family to go to law school. It was really important to me to be able to sort of bring up people with me. And so, after graduating law school, clerking for the Fourth Circuit and the Central District of California, I really wanted to go to a place, find a firm where I felt like I would be going forward and not taking a step back. So many law firms, the practice, the sort of business model is for associates to do kind of the fifth level work where there's a partner, there's a bunch of associates in between, and then there's a really junior associate at the bottom who's maybe writing a memo or a part of a memo that goes through multiple layers of review before the document's filed or makes its way to the client. And I just wanted to be somewhere where I was really invested in my clients, in my cases, where I wouldn't be taking that step backwards, right? Because as a federal clerk, you are really in the action. You have a lot of responsibility. And I just wanted, to keep that going in my trial practice. So Sussman Godfrey was, it was the place that fit the bill. It checked all the boxes. And I knew that I wanted to be in a firm for the long term.
Jesse, I mean, your resume is kind of sparkling, right? I mean, and it's so much of what goes into Sussman Godfrey. Sussman Godfrey obviously has an incredible reputation. Your federal clerkships, they're very, very, very difficult to get. And you've obviously worked incredibly hard to be in this spot where you are right now. It seems like we're at a point where the model for law firms is being kind of disrupted a little bit, or probably now more than it was when you joined Sussman. What are your thoughts about that? I mean, sort of give me the lay of the land of the industry, how it's changed, and what your concerns are about, how it's moving forward.
Well, first of all, thank you. I love being described as sparkly, so I will take it in any capacity, but especially when it comes to my resume. Yeah, look, my experience in this industry is relatively limited in that I started my private practice career at Sussman. I was an associate for 6 years, and I made partner last year, effective this year. So I'm a first-year partner, 7th year at the firm. This is my whole career after clerking. But I spent summers at some large law firms, as many law students do, and I've seen lawyers kind of on the other side or even co-counsel with us. And I do think that we do something really special and really unique. I don't understand why someone needs to wait 5 years to take a deposition. I really don't get that. There is nothing too controversial about asking someone questions you probably already know the answers to, although I don't think you have to ask questions in depositions you know the answers to. But you probably know the answers because you've been looking at the documents, you've been doing all the research and preparation about facts that you're also incredibly familiar with. There's just nothing scary about that. It doesn't hurt the case to have the person that knows the case the best to ask the questions and put the deponent in the hot seat and sort of, put them on the spot. Sussman, we really put our money where our mouth is. Our whole model is associates. We have a saying here: you write it, you argue it. Right? It's really, you are doing a lot of the work. Obviously, with a team, folks are helping to supervise and manage and reviewing your work. But it's a really special place. We're doing something really special, and I hope to see more law firms sort of take a page out of our book. There are so many law students who come to interview with us for a summer position, or law clerks who are looking to join our firm full time after their clerkship. And they all say, I want to be somewhere where I can get that substantive early stand-up experience. A lot of places do say that that's what they give their associates. And I want to be very clear. There is a way, our model is not the only model. And for some folks, being thrown into the deep end, that's not the best way for them to learn. The fight or flight, it's not for everyone. It really is like drinking water out of a fire hydrant here, in the beginning in particular. There's a lot to say for observation and learning by observation. It's just not the way we do things. And I really would like to see more firms sort of stepping up and promoting and empowering their young associates, because they're fabulous lawyers, and they're only going to be more fabulous earlier on if they're actually given the opportunity to sort of take the reins and show everyone what they've got.
You talk very highly of your firm, and I can definitely see why. One thing you honed in on is that you made the selection very strategically throughout your career. You knew that this firm had all the qualities you were looking for. How do you go about determining those qualities and then actually seeing if the law firm has them internally? Because you don't really know until you're in there. So how did you go about understanding that?
Yeah, look, it's a really good question, and it's a really hard one to answer. I think a lot of places, and to be clear, right, there are a lot of really wonderful firms out there other than Sussman Godfrey. I think a lot of places will say we give our associates, for example, really early stand-up opportunities, and maybe just what that looks like is different than what it looks like here. But I encourage, students and clerks, lawyers to really push a little bit. Ask about, what does your day look like to, a junior associate? Ask if they've taken any depositions. Ask if they've been to trial. If they went to trial or if they worked on trials, ask if they took a witness. I took a witness at my first trial, and I was a 4th-year associate. There's a former associate at our firm who he took a witness at arbitration in like his first month on the job. So I think you ask the questions, and then you sort of ask the follow-up. You ask for the proof, right? Not just the buzzwords and the things we're all kind of looking for. In terms of kind of business practices, I think you can ask, what kind of role, if any, do associates have in business development? Is there a process by which the firm sort of is transparent in the kinds of matters that they're taking on? At Sussman, we, I think, pretty notoriously have a Wednesday meeting where every associate and lawyer and partner at the firm has a vote on the cases that we take on alternative fee arrangements. One person, one vote. that's the way we do it. My vote counts as much as a first-year associate's vote, counts as much as a managing partner's vote. And so, you can really ask the tough questions. And I don't think that has to wait until you have an offer in your hand.
I love that, Jesse, so much. I live and spent the last 6 years really practicing in rural West Texas and South Texas, but where you don't have many options, right? Like as a public defender, you're in court. You have no choice but to say yes to those stand-up opportunities, and almost the opposite is true, right? You get them too quickly, probably with less support than you otherwise should. But I guess where I'm going with this question is, I am really interested now in, especially with my students, like the skills that they're learning. I think it happened with COVID, where a lot of it was reduced to these virtual classrooms, and we're seeing a different skill set, I think, develop in younger attorneys, right? How confident they are in being on their feet, the soft skills. Information access is there. You can get what you want so quickly now. And the question is so the writing it is great. Now arguing it is actually a skill that involves so many other sort of difficult to teach soft skills that I'm wondering if you're seeing them be taught differently or analyzed differently, or if they're showing up and interviewing at your firm with a different set of skills than, say, when you interviewed with Sussman.
I don't know, Joe, if it's so much about showing up and sort of exhibiting different skills. What I do see and hear is sort of an interest in, obviously, a lot of questions around remote work. And I have to be honest, maybe call me old school. I am in the office 5 days a week. I like the separation of church and state in my life. Home is home, work is work. Obviously, there are times when the two bleed together a little bit, but I think that attorney development really is at its best when folks are in the office working together. Personal opinion, feel free to disagree, but from soft skills to being able to go knock on doors around your office and say, hey, I've got an oral argument coming up. Does anybody have 30 minutes to moot me in the conference room? You can also, of course, send that email in advance to make sure folks are in. But I think that all of that, FaceTime outside of a screen is hugely important. Being able to walk into a partner's office on a case that you're working on or on a case that you're not working on because they happen to be there, sort of knock on their door, or if it's already open, walk in and ask a question that maybe you wouldn't have the confidence to call someone on their cell phone to ask. I think that's a huge thing, and really can't be overstated. The comfort that you sort of have in building your confidence and getting to know your colleagues. There's also the element of kind of the culture of a firm or an office, right? We're all really pretty close-knit here. We spend a lot of time together in the office. We spend a lot of time together socializing outside of the office, whether it's at professional functions, bar events, or whether it's a happy hour, every month, or going over to somebody's house every few months to have a dinner party. Those things are really important to me, and they're important to the firm. And I think they really help attorneys develop, particularly those soft skills that you're talking about.
It's a very interesting viewpoint. I think it makes a lot of sense. Even though a lot of our world is going remote, there are certain industries that just really benefit from that in-person experience. Now, I'm curious, Jesse, when it comes to your firm, they tackle a lot of various industries, various disciplines, construction, antitrust, breach of contract. So there's a lot of different disciplines going on here. How do you go about tackling a case when it may not entirely be in your wheelhouse per se, but you still got to do the same level of work and professionalism when it comes to tackling it? How do you go about managing that?
Yeah, look, I think no matter what kind of lawyer you are, what case it is, you sort of have to become an expert in that subject matter, in the facts of that case. So while my practice spans, as you know, construction matters, antitrust, products liability, class action, consumer disputes, privacy issues, at the end of the day, even if I only focused on construction or I only focused on antitrust, every single time I would have to learn facts about a new industry because antitrust takes many different forms. I've had an antitrust case that was in the mortgage and finance industry. I have an antitrust case right now that's about, pricing algorithms, and another one that's about, the automotive industry. So I think no matter what subject matter of the law you're dealing or what discipline you're dealing with, you're always going to have a different subject matter factually that you have to dive into and become the master of. So I don't think it's all that different when you're changing legal disciplines from, any one case to the other. But in terms of skills or sort of hard best practices to follow, I poke around on the internet, see what I can see. I set up news or Google alerts that involve either my clients or sort of software that we're interested in, depending on the case, issues that are, lend themselves to kind of key term searches, so that I can get a sense of what's going on. I often will, call the client and say, hey, treat me like a juror and walk me through your business. Let's talk about, what it is on the ground, what it looks like, what the issues are, so that we can start to really own in on what matters in the case. And then I, have my homework to figure out what else I need to kind of learn or run down. But at the end of the day, right, the federal rules of civil procedure or the state court rules of any given state, they're always those rules. So you're just applying them to new facts.
What other tech are you using? I mean, there's obviously like information recall using different tech products is just, you can get whatever you want, whenever you want, how quickly you want it. It's now a question of filtering out noise, I suppose, and how you decide what's most valuable. And I'm just curious what kind of tech you're using that helps this side of your practice.
Look, if you're asking, for example, like, do I use AI? The answer is no, I don't. I use Westlaw and Lexis, the old school Boolean key term, broad word searches. I will say every now and again, I will use sort of the AI function within those engines, and just kind of use it as a gut check to see if whatever it's synthesizing is similar to what I'm finding out there with the good old fashioned research. But, otherwise I'm not doing anything too fancy. I'm certainly open to it. I know that one of my partners recently was going to go through sort of a demo for a certain kind of AI product that helps synthesize, I think, deposition transcripts and summarize them. I haven't heard back yet if she likes it or not, but we're certainly open to it and hearing kind of what else is out there. But I'm a little hesitant to just trust the machines to do all the work for me.
Well, wait, can you go into that a little bit more? Because you said a moment ago, it's like, I want people in the office. I want to be in the office 5 days a week. And now you're sitting here saying, maybe a little cautious about AI usage. I feel like that is a little less common now. I mean, there's hesitance for sure, but I'm wondering what your personal sort of relationship is with it and why you're maybe a little hesitant to use it right now.
I'm hesitant because I've seen it backfire, right? I think we've all seen those articles of folks who, either filed a brief that was AI generated or, expert reports that cite something that's based on AI and it blows up in their face. I mean, we've heard these horror stories. And so to be honest, that's where my hesitancy comes from. And that's why I think it's a tool that can be helpful, but needs to be treated as a tool and not as a replacement for sort of good old fashioned kind of elbow grease and hard work and brain power. So, I don't know that I'm as much in the minority in that respect as others, or at least I hope not, because while absolutely I'm here to see what technology can do for us, I also think it has its limits.
It's a great point. We've had various insights on this and people's takes. Others love it. But the hesitancy has always been there. It's always like a looming thought for a lot of attorneys, and it's well placed.
I'm curious. You never know what if you're using something, for example, to synthesize a deposition transcript. I'm sure it might get a lot of the kind of high big issues, but you never know what little stuff you're missing. So
better to just trust yourself and your gut. To go and dig deep. Yeah. Now, I'm curious, you mentioned something earlier about how you are able to talk to your client and say, hey, tell me about your business in like the simplest terms, right? Like, because if a juror was right here, they need to understand what you do in a very high level way. That sounds like a very good trial strategy. Is there anything else that you've learned throughout the years when it comes to going to trial that has really just elevated your skills and how you perform in the courtroom?
I think so. As you mentioned kind of at the top of the call, I've had a lot of cases where we've really parachuted in very close to go time. And some of those cases are cases that we were brought in sort of late in the game before trial. Some of those cases are cases where we've just been on an expedited timeline because of the nature of the case or the contract at issue, and we've developed the case from beginning to end. And in each of those cases, I'll say I kind of go through that process. One of the most successful, one of the biggest wins that I've had was that a case where it was a construction dispute in the renewable energies industry. I can't speak too many specifics about it because it was a confidential arbitration, but we got a huge award for our client, multiple hundreds of millions of dollars for our client in this space. We all flew down to their office, weeks before we filed the suit and sort of interviewed the employees. We talked to everyone to kind of get a sense of who's going to be a great witness, who knows sort of the answers to the questions that are going to lie at the heart of this case. Because the entire time we were litigating this case, we were treating it as though it was going to go to trial. And I think that is a little unique about Sussman's sort of approach. We're not litigating a case to summary judgment. We're not litigating a case to settlement. To be clear, if those two things are in our client's best interest, then of course that's a great outcome. But that's not the goal of what we're doing here. And that's sort of not the scope of the litigation that we're taking. And so I think having that very informal, let me meet everybody, let me figure out what everybody's up to, let's see who are the folks that are going to be important. That's going to matter not only to who you ultimately bring to trial, but also whose documents are going to be collected, whose documents are going to be produced, that kind of thing. So I think that has been a really great strategy and something that has gotten us really great results.
I can't tell you how much I love that assessment of the internal culture of your firm. I mean, I always say I do different kind of work, but the strongest weapon I have as a defense lawyer is not just my willingness to go to trial. It's some combination of my willingness to go to trial and then my track record once I've been in trial, right? There's a credibility there that you can't buy. You can't sort of sidestep it. It sounds like that's really true internally with the culture of Sussman. And then, speak a little bit more about this too. I also think that something fundamentally changes your relationship with all parties, the court especially, just your ability to step in there and be competent on your feet. It's one thing to be the good legal mastermind and to be able to distill arguments and understand the law. It's totally another skill to be able to do exactly what you just said and say, okay, this is the legal side. Now, how do I communicate this to a juror? Like, that's a really different skill that feels like something that you might more innately have, or is this something you've really worked on developing yourself too?
Who knows where it all comes from? In a perfect world, you have both of those things, right? In order to get in front of a jury, you have to write beautiful briefs, right? So, the hope is that we're doing both. But I think that there are a lot of things that folks can do to sort of flex and develop those hard skills when it comes to, presenting to a jury, when it comes to distilling facts and thinking about what matters most in the case and what the narrative's going to be. Yeah, look, I have a background in performance. I was a dancer and then I was a policy debater in high school. And so I like public speaking, and it's never been something that I shy away from or that makes me too nervous. So that helps. But I know plenty of folks who maybe don't have that background or didn't have that background, who are phenomenal in front of a court or in front of a jury. And so I think there's a lot of ways to go about it, right? You can, but I think the preeminent way, the best way to go about it is actually to get in court and actually to get in front of a jury if your case, is one of those cases that happens to get to that point. But again, sort of circling back to some of the stuff we were talking about earlier, to flex those skills, you got to actually do it. Put your young associates in court.
Yes, agreed.
So if you want to put your young associates in court, how do you best prepare them, right? Because I know if you're going to be tackling this as a team, especially as a partner, you've got a lot on your plate already. How do you know how to delegate and really make sure that they're prepared to take it on in court in front of a public setting?
Yeah, well, look, here, the associates are part of the team every step of the way. It's not like your associates are sort of only brought in to the strategy or the judgment calls or the decisions that we're making about the direction of a case. Once there's a motion to write or a brief to write or an argument to have, they're truly part of the team every day, the whole time from beginning to end. We have trial team meetings every week. We stay on top of the case, and the associate is largely the person that's in charge of helping us sort of keep our ducks in a row, managing our task list. And so they know the case as well, if not better, than many of the partners on the case, at least at a really sort of in the weeds kind of perspective. I think one of the things that as you develop as an attorney here, learning how to see the forest for the trees is actually sort of a skill that you need to learn and develop because you're given so much responsibility on a day-to-day basis that maybe you're really just seeing the trees for a large part of your practice. Whereas I think the partners who maybe are a little bit removed from some of the nitty-gritty day-to-day have a better sense of kind of the big things that are going to matter, the big picture things that are going to matter. But in terms of some examples of things that associates can do or that partners can do with their associates to sort of help prepare them and set them up for success, whenever we have a big argument, when I was an associate, the same was true. My team would moot me. The partners on my team, we'd schedule a time to be mooted. Now, to be, before that moot in front of the partners that were going to be reviewing me and deciding sort of my future at this firm, I would email my fellow associates and say, hey, here's the brief. Here's, the opposition. Here's the reply. Here's my outline that I put together of sort of the hardest questions that I think I might get asked. Anybody have 30 minutes to an hour sometime in the next week to sit down and pepper me with questions and do a mock? I think that's a huge way to set yourself up for success. But we certainly do that for associates that are going to be taking on arguments. A lot of partners do it too. There's not really any sort of magic difference between how the partners prepare and the associates prepare.
Jesse, I would love to dive back into your performance background for a second, because I love talking to practitioners who, I don't want to necessarily say have a non-traditional background, but who do have something outside of the law in their past that is really super other side of the brain, right? Like the creative side, the performative side. When I was working in restaurants, I still think in that hospitality mindset so much when I'm even engaging with my practice. How you talked about just the high level sort of performative skills that you might have. What are some other things like that you've drawn from your non-law background that you still sort of bring into your practice in some maybe unconventional ways?
Yeah, sure. Look, I was nodding really heavily when you mentioned the restaurant industry because I put myself through college working at a restaurant and have been sort of slinging drinks for a long time before I went to law school. So I can't agree with you more there. There's nothing more. Look, the law is a customer service industry the same way that restaurants are a customer service industry as far as I'm concerned. So there's a lot of overlap there. I was a Pilates instructor in between college and law school, and then for a little bit during law school. And I actually draw on that a lot when I think about not the nuts and bolts of explaining tricky issues to a court or to a jury or to a tribunal or arbitrators. But the underlying idea, look, anybody who's taken Pilates will tell you that it is really weird. You're doing weird movements, but you're also focusing secondary muscle groups rather than primary muscle groups. And if you don't have a background in some sort of form of movement or form of conditioning where that's the goal, it's going to feel really unnatural. And you might not even connect with those muscles when you take your first Pilates class. They have this saying, it's 10 sessions to sort of feel a difference, 20 sessions to see a difference, 30 sessions to have a whole new mind-body connection. Very silly, but true. I think that teaching a court or teaching a jury about a complicated factual issue or a complicated legal issue isn't really all that different from teaching a football player, right, how to target some very small muscle that they've never heard of and probably never used on purpose, and to only isolate that muscle in trying to do a really small movement that involves very little weight. I can't tell you how many athletes that I would train, usually because they were essentially forced to go take a Pilates class, sort of the story of football players, taking ballet classes. And they would find themselves shaking because suddenly they were like, oh man, I don't have any weight on this, but this is really hard. And so I think that, being a trial lawyer maybe isn't that different from being a Pilates instructor or a teacher of any other kind of hard subject where you have to find a way to communicate with your client.
I love that you dove into those examples specifically. I've taken a Pilates class before, and it is hard. It entirely
It's weird, right? Feels weird.
Feels very weird, but also in the service industry, I can tell you it has helped me understand how to remain completely calm under an immense amount of pressure, because the kitchen is organized chaos at its finest.
That's absolutely right. Or when, you get into a heated debate with opposing counsel, or, you just kind of smile, nod, wait for them to be done. It's a lot like serving.
Yeah, definitely.
It really, really is. No, it's such a wonderful, wonderful analogy.
And Jesse, I want to ask you about your community initiatives. Can you tell me more about those? We saw them in your background. What do you like to engage with when it comes to your community?
Yeah, I think there's really sort of three main projects that I have going on that are sort of community oriented. One is my firm community, one is sort of the legal industry community, and one is my LA community. Here at the law firm, when I was an associate about 5 years ago, I started our mentoring program and a mentoring committee. It was a whole overhaul of the way that we assign associates, partner and associate mentors. It was incredibly important to me to make sure that we were invested in our associates and sort of setting them up for success and kind of giving them a safe space, if you will, to have frank conversations about things that might be going on in their cases, or just to have another set of people that were an automatic place where you could go to talk about either legal issues or maybe personnel dynamics that were tricky, or just kind of talk through something that they might be struggling with at the job. The second thing that is also involves Sussman Godfrey, but really is more about contributing to the legal community writ large, is we have the Sussman Godfrey Prize. Similar timing, about 5 years ago, I was involved in helping develop that program with my partner, Sean Raymond. It was really his brainchild, but at the time, it was something I felt really strongly about, and so sort of rode his coattails to be able to get involved and help develop that program. It is a cash prize awarded to now 20 1L or 2Ls from a select group of eligible law schools. These are 1Ls and 2Ls of color. It's intentional that way, who have, shown excellence and overall achievement. These folks have incredible stories. They are academically just superstars. And it just comes with ongoing mentoring from lawyers from the firm. And that's been incredibly gratifying. But the goal there, right, is to sort of promote and increase the diversity pipeline for trial lawyers. And the third really speaks to my LA community, and that's the Just the Beginning Foundation. There's a lot of pockets and chapters of JTB around the country. It's a foundation that was co-founded by Judge Ann Claire Williams, who was a Seventh Circuit judge. I externed with her when I was in law school and learned about JTB, had to do some work for JTB for her when I was her extern. And then when I was clerking for Judge G on the Central District, lo and behold, she also had a JTB connection and sort of voluntold me to get involved while I was in chambers. And I was so thrilled to sort of have that program come full circle, that when I stopped, when I wasn't a clerk anymore and I was in private practice, it was one of the few things that I did outside of the law firm for the first couple years that I was practicing. I intentionally waited until about my third year to start getting really involved in kind of community work. I wanted to just focus on being the best associate I could for the first couple of years, kind of get my sea legs under me, and then started doing JTB work. So I'm the co-chair of the steering committee for JTB's Los Angeles Summer Legal Institute. It's a 5-day free immersion program for LA area high schoolers who are interested in or potentially interested in careers in the law. It's put on by the bench and the bar. So we have federal judges, state judges, as well as a lot of practitioners here in LA who put on, it's 5 days, full days of programming. It's at Loyola Law School every year in June. And there's a mediation competition that's going on the whole time. So the students at the end get to sort of flex those skills and do a negotiation. And there's an award for, who's kind of the best team of negotiation. But throughout the week, there are all kinds of programs. There's a federal court day visit where they learn about they sit and get to meet with judges. They go visit the U.S. Marshals, sort of part of the courthouse. There are various panels, from law student panels to, private practice panels to nonprofit panels, just ways to get young folks excited about potentially, going into the law, and to be able to see that it's something that they can do and see themselves sort of, in all of these practitioners and jurists that are at it.
And I'm guessing this is a complete guess, so tell me if I'm off base, but it sounds like this might come from a place that is connected to your personal story. I mean, I guess I'm trying to figure out why this side of your professional life, this like philanthropic side or this giving side, means so much to you.
Sure. I think it's twofold. My mom, who, she started a library when I was 4 or 5. We lived in a small community south of Nashville, about 45 minutes south of Nashville, called Bethesda. It's an unincorporated community. It's not even a town. It doesn't have its own zip code. Back in my day, when I grew up there was really very little that was there, very little infrastructure. There was like a gas station down the road that had a really great deli. The person that owned the deli then was the farmer, that owned the land behind the shop. But there wasn't a library, and you had to drive, otherwise 30 minutes to go to the grocery store. So my mom opened a library. She's always been, a huge fan of books and education and learning. She opened a library, and she also opened a corner closet, which she called it, which was a place, essentially a clothing drive, canned food drive, sort of turned into kind of having a life of its own. But philanthropy was always really, really important to her, and giving back. I was raised Jewish, but my dad, who is from Mexico, is Catholic. And so for Hanukkah, rather than me getting 8 days of presents, we would essentially anonymously sponsor someone in the community that we knew was sort of facing a hard time because of my mom's work at the corner closet and the library. And so tzedakah, right, was the way that we gave back. And so that's always been important to me. But then the other side, right, is that my dad's from Mexico. He immigrated to this country in the 1950s. He's got a real American dream story. He's a tailor. Moved to Hollywood, worked for the Ci d'Avour, worked for Nudie Cohn, and then branched out on his own and has dressed sort of some of the biggest names in kind of country music and rock stars. So really has made everything his own. But I didn't have lawyers in my family, as I've mentioned before. My brother and sister didn't graduate from college. They didn't go to law school. They don't have sort of professional educations. Smart, accomplished folks, but not because of sort of our higher education in this country. And so it's always been really important to me to give back. I had to make a lot of my own mentors growing up and finding my way through, a non-traditional path to the law. And I was not afraid of reaching out, cold calling people, sending emails of friends of family who maybe knew a lawyer. But I know a lot of folks find that really intimidating. And I truly think that the only reason why I wasn't afraid of it is because I had maybe this kind of loud performative background, but also because I grew up around a lot of adults. My brother and sister are 14 and 18 years older than me, respectively. My dad is much older than my mom. There were a lot of adults around all the time. And so it didn't scare me to talk to adults. But I know that not everyone's in that position. And, here I am, first generation American, daughter of an immigrant, like I mentioned, first one in my family to graduate from college, go to law school. How could I not give back? How could I not invest my time in sort of mentorship and, giving others an opportunity to sort of pave a way the way that I was able to?
Wow. That is an incredible story. And I'm so glad we asked about it because it really ties everything together for me in terms of, your background, the initiatives you're tackling right now, and how it really just ties back into what you grew up with. It's absolutely incredible.
Oh, thanks.
Now, as we're wrapping up here, we always like to ask our guests the final question, and that is, what is your hottest take on the industry right now?
Well, we talked a little bit about it before, but I really think everyone should return to the office and stop this work from home remote madness.
I love it.
Our co-founders we got to get you guys on a on a debate stage.
Amazing. I love it.
Love it. That's a good hot take. Great hot take. Well, thank you for tuning into Between the Briefs, brought to you by Steno. A special thanks to our guest, Jesse-Justin Cuevas, for sharing her incredible insights on the world of trial law, high-stakes litigation, and leadership in the legal field. And of course, a big thanks to my co-host, Joe Stevens, for another fantastic conversation.
Right back at you, Adrian. Be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode, and stay tuned for more thought-provoking discussions at the intersection of law, technology, and innovation. We'll see you next time.
Up next on Between the Briefs.
You want to hear the God's honest truth? I stopped hiring anybody with legal experience to work at my law firm. I hired 21-year-olds, and 25% of my profits go to the staff that are running my firm. Do you have any idea a 24-year-old that goes from $19 an hour to $80,000 a year will come up with to do traditional lawyering in a different way?
Stay tuned for the full interview coming to you soon. Between the Briefs is brought to you by Steno. To find out more about Steno and how we combine exceptional court reporting and litigation support services to deliver a superior litigation experience, visit steno.com. That's STENO.com. And then make sure to search for Between the Briefs in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or anywhere else you get your podcasts, and click subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. On behalf of the team here at Steno, thanks for listening.